The time being now 6 o'clock, at this time, we will call this meeting to order. This being the August meeting of the Dawson County Planning and Zoning Board. We will begin with invocation from Tim Bennett, if you would, please, Tim.
Let's bow our heads, let's pray. Father, we come to you tonight in the name of Jesus. Thank you for your wonderful love, your mercy and grace. Thank you for all those who came out tonight, Lord, to this meeting. I just pray that everything that's said and done would most of all glorify you and benefit the county as a whole. And Father, we just need you in this day and time. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Yes, if you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. This time we'll have a roll call. Ms. Harmony. Let the record show that we are all present. All the regular Board of Commissioner members, our Planning Commissioner members. Under announcements, there will be a Planning Commission meeting on September the 15th, 2020, 6 o'clock, same location. Under our minutes from last month, assume you've had opportunity to review your minutes. Is there any amendments that need to be made? If there's not, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moving a second to approve, all in favor? Passes 4-0 with one abstention because I was not here. The agenda that's prepared before you, is there any amendments to the agenda that we have tonight? If not, is there a move to approve those as presented by staff?
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Moving a second to approve the agenda. All in favor? Motion is carried 5-0. If you are here tonight to speak either in favor or in opposition of any application, and you have given more than $250 to any local official campaign, there's a form that needs to be filled out, and Ms. Harmony has it up here at the desk. Under new business, we'll begin with application for special use. Presentation of SU 20-01, Scott Adamson is requesting a special use permit for a dog kennel, or for dog kennels, located at tax map parcel 106-051-017, Dawson Forest Road East. Is someone here to speak for Mr. Adamson? If you would, please come forward to the podium. There's a piece of paper there on the podium. If you would, write your name and address on it. If you would, please state your name.
Selena Adamson.
Selena Adamson. And if you would, please give us a brief presentation of your request for a special use permit.
Our request today is to, looking to secure a special use permit to obtain a business license. We have a couple of phases that we would like to do out of our home. Phase one would be a kennel type environment. You say the word kennel and it makes you think of like actual kennels, but these are dogs coming into our home that are acting like they're our dogs. They're kenneled at night when they need to go to bed, when they're being fed, and things like that. But majority of the time, they're running around the home with us, interacting with us as our family members. That's phase one of our option. And as the years progress and it becomes more of a demand, we would like to move into our in-law suite. And that is connected to our home. It wouldn't be an additional add-ons as far as the home itself. It would just be additional space that we could obtain more animals at that time. And then our third phase would be the 3 to 5 year. Again, if it demands that, we have more clientele and more people that are wanting to board with us, we would expand into our pasture and build a building. At that point, we would hire staff to help us at that point, and we could put more facilities to accommodate more of a kennel type out in our pasture. And that's kind of what we're trying to do today, is just to obtain the license to start that process.
Okay. Do you currently have dogs residing with you?
We have our dogs, yes.
You have your dogs. And how many of those are there?
We have 6 altogether, and then my sister, she has 3.
So there's 9 dogs total there currently? Okay. And are these dogs crated at night?
No.
Will they be crated at night?
Our dogs, no.
Not your dogs, but the 20 that you're asking for initially?
It depends. We kind of follow by the standard of this, like if they don't or will not be a type of dog that's not accommodated for a kennel, because some dogs get stressed out in that facility. That's why we're trying to do this, because I've worked in the animal field since I graduated high school, and I've worked in a kennel before, so I know what kind of stress that comes upon them. So we try to accommodate them best that they can. So if they were to be stressed out, then we would also, let them run around our home. We try to just make it a home environment. But typically, we would want them to be in their kennel at night so everyone is safe and secure.
Okay. So you're looking to house an additional 11 dogs at this time, more or less, and then phase into phase 2, and then 3, up to a maximum of 80 dogs, is that correct?
It could potentially in 5 years or so, yes.
Okay. What about wastewater? Do you have a higher infiltrator system of some type?
No, we scoop and things like that. I mean, that's what we do for our own dogs right now currently. That's, when we have the agricultural department came out and talked to us and trying to fulfill a license and things like that, they spoke about waste being disposed of in a trash can. Other than that, there wasn't really.
That's the way you continue to dispose of waste in a trash
Yes.
can? Okay. Are you currently on septic or sewer?
Septic.
Oh, you are on septic, okay. So it's when you specify kennel, I'm thinking of wash down.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of fecal material going into a system, especially being a septic system. And having built kennels myself, I understand how that hair needs to be separated in order for it to work through the septic system.
Yeah, and at that point, that would be more towards the building aspect. The
Okay.
first phase is pretty much just out of our home. It's a home place for the animals, not necessarily, I hate to use the word kennel because it's not necessarily a kennel. I mean.
That's what it says in front of
I
you,
know,
kennel,
it's
so-
kind of hard to explain because that's how we have to explain it when we're talking to the agriculture department, things like that, so,
And the special use permit would be for a kennel.
yes.
So although you're saying right now, just be inside your home, the allowance, if you were allowed a special use permit, would allow you to continue to grow and become a kennel.
Yes.
So that's why I was wanting to address that while we're
Yeah.
here. Okay. Are there any other questions to the applicant? Thank you.
You're welcome.
You may be
Thank you.
seated. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? If you would, please come forward. There's a piece of paper on the podium. I'll need you to sign it and place your address on it as well.
How y'all doing today?
If you would, state your name, please.
Tim Hamby, and I'm opposing it mostly because I own the surrounding property on all 3 sides of it. Got a home on the back side, which my dad lives in, and I'm afraid it's gonna have a negative effect on moving forward of what I wanna do with the property. Where she's talking about building the new kennel is gonna be basically right, the only place to build it's gonna be right where I have a property which is buildable. It's zone residential. I probably have plans on building a house there one day, so I don't really want to have it next to a bunch of dogs. Currently, the house behind us, we have a fence that borders, that divides our property, and she has up to 9 dogs already, which hard to have a conversation outside with 9 dogs barking all the time. So much more than that, would be, sure enough, a nuisance to us. So, I think you probably have a copy of the petition that, one of the people in, subdivision beside us, Paddock Place and, Dawson Junction on each side of the property.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you want another copy of it. Do you have a copy of it?
I do have a copy, but bring it on up here.
Okay.
We'll have one hard copy for the
I
record.
think this one right here has got a few more signatures on
Okay.
it.
All right. But now, as I understand correctly, you do not live in a subdivision, is that correct?
I do not.
Okay. You say you own the land around it. Which land are you speaking of?
Well, they have a 2-acre house here. I own the land on all 3 sides of it.
Okay.
Currently, there's a house right behind it that I own, that my dad lives in. we got 4, 5, 6 acres there on that part, and there's probably 2 on each side of it.
Okay,
That's about all I got.
thanks, sir.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak in opposition to the application? If you would, please come forward to the podium. Need you to place your name and address on the piece of paper there that's on the podium.
Paper's no longer here.
The paper's no longer here. Mr. Tim Hamby, would you please bring the piece of paper back? For the record, if you would, please state your name.
Savannah Mathis.
Okay. And what's your opposition?
We also do not want it built. I do live in that subdivision that he is speaking of, and I did sign the petition.
Is that the Dawson Junction or the
Dawson Junction, sir.
Dawson Junction? Okay. And your opposition is?
I'm sorry, I'm really nervous sitting here.
Don't worry about that.
We are worried that it's gonna decrease our home sale values. So if we wanted to potentially sell our homes, a lot of buyers are not gonna wanna buy the home if there's a bunch of dogs and barking and causing a nuisance. The smell, we don't wanna have to smell it standing outside playing with our kids or whatever. Also, there's a lot of children in our subdivision. I myself, we have 4 kids in our house. There's a lot of other families that have a lot of kids too, and if one of these dogs or multiple get out and they're dangerous or they're nervous around other people, we don't want our children being threatened by other animals in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else speaking in opposition? If you would, please come forward. Place your name and address on the piece of paper that's left on the podium.
My name is Angela Long. I live across the street at 2500 Dawson Forest Road. I also do not want the kennel to be across the street. Everything down there, it echoes. You can hear everything up there where we live. There's already so much traffic on that road. 3 schools, 2 churches, daycare, a store, a veterinarian, and like she was talking about, all the kids in the neighborhood, I would be worried also that the dogs might get out or, you know, and hurt a child. And also, I don't know what's been done to that house, you know, since my folks used to own it. And so I know there's a well underneath that house.
Which folks were that, if you don't mind me asking?
Poole and Edna Jones.
Okay,
And there used to be a well that's been built over. And there used to be a creek or a stream behind the house. I don't know if it's still running or what. I ain't been over there in years. But that's my concern. It's just, I don't want the noise and I don't want the smell.
okay, thank you. Is there anyone else speaking in opposition to the application? If you would, please come forward. Place your name and address on the piece of paper that's there on the podium.
My name is Deborah Rivetti. I live at 146 Paddock Place. We live behind the property that's in question, becoming a kennel. We live next to Cindy and Steve Hamby. We have concerns too with the noise that we've been already having a problem with the 9 dogs they already have. Every morning, they're letting the dogs out at 9 o'clock or at 5 o'clock, and they usually don't put them back in till around 9. With the barking that's going on already, we never get to sleep in, and it's a nuisance already. So we feel that them adding more dogs to this situation is just adding more problems for all of us.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Is anyone else speaking in opposition? Please come forward, place your name and address on the piece of paper there on the podium.
My name is Bethany Miller. I live in Dawson Junction subdivision. On the opposite side, however, that side of the neighborhood is still connected to our neighborhood. I am fixing my house up to sell it in a couple of years, and I just feel that if there's a kennel nearby, it will decrease my property value, because I bought this home as an investment because I knew that the area is growing. I also have small children and have dogs of my own, and that's a concern as well. If one of mine got out and heard the, noise, decided to cross 53 and got hit, that would upset me pretty bad. So I don't really have anything else, just that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else speak in opposition to the application? Seeing, if you would, please come forward. Place your name and address on the podium, on the piece of paper that's there on the podium.
It is, I'm a little nervous, to be quite honest with you, sir.
Could you give me your name, please?
Mark Long. I
Okay.
live at 2500 Dawson Forest Road. And as stated before, me and my wife, we live directly across from the said property at 2500. And there really is an echo that comes from the property. We can hear people speaking, conversations, just from normal talking. And the noise, I can pretty much well know the hound dogs from the rest of the dogs down there. I know them, we all understand. And to be quite honest with you, just for fun, every now and then, I'll come in from home from work, and I'll just get the dog started. All I gotta do is just bark a little bit, and they always start back in on barking. Just, just having whatnot. The kennel owner yourself, sir, and nothing about the Humane Society at Dawsonville will do the best they can with what they got. But if you're ever in the area of Rock Creek Park and you're actually walking around the trail, the dogs are barking all the time. And there's, especially whenever they let them out, but you can pretty much well get them started too also. They just constantly bark. And also the stench. We ain't just talking about an odor, but it stinks. It really does. I worked in sewer for over 20 years, and sometimes the odor coming from that plant, from the dog kennel, is sickening. It really is. To make mention of little ones, the young lady herself, Miss Adams, she made mention also of having children of her own, but she also stated of the fact that she's going to be bringing in nervous animals. Nervous animals, and also nervous animals, they can get hyper, they can get mean, and there's also a safety factor within little ones, and also not just for little ones, but for our own self also, and the surrounding community. And I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Is there anyone else speak in opposition to the application? If you would, please come forward. Write your name and address on the piece of paper there on the podium.
Hey, my name is Doug Hughes. I was the one that started this petition to not have this kennel here. I'm concerned about the property values and the noise. I know that they have animals already. We hear their dogs. They've got a chicken coop out there. They got a rooster that runs wild. I mean, I'm not real sure if they know how to take care of animals and how to train them not to bark, okay, and disturb the neighborhoods. Like I said, it's down there in that valley and you can hear everything. So anyways, Everything else that people have said, I'm pretty much on board with them, that, we need to look out after our property values. We're all maintaining homes that we keep them nice and neat, and I just think that that's the way it needs to stay.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Is there anyone else speaking in opposition to the application? Seeing none, at this time we'll close it to the board for discussion. Gentlemen, do you have any discussion on a dog kennel being built on 2.5 acres on Dawson Forest Road?
To me, it just seems like a small lot to do that on. I know they're talking about starting out with about 20 dogs or so, but when you get up to, if they've got plans to go to 80, I would hate to say that they could have 20, and then, when you get up to 80, that's gonna be a lot of dogs that's gonna be there. And I noticed that, for them to be on the septic tank, I don't know what kind of, like you was talking about the filtration when they clean them and stuff. I know that, Etowah Water says any future expansion would have to be evaluated because says there's no sanitary sewer there. If they would ever have to go on sewer, I think that would be an issue, so.
Certainly would, yes.
I just think that it would be, if it was more out in the middle of nowhere, I think maybe it might be all right, but it's just the area that it's in. I don't know that it would do justice to the neighbors to have it in the area.
Just for the enlightenment of this board as well, this is RA, correct? On 2.5 acres, is that right? Okay. I believe this board discussed last week or last month in my absence about the size of RA. So, RA from 1986 has always been 5 acres. This particular piece is 2.5, and it is currently RA under our zoning as it is. But it's also in a highly residential area too. So, just something to be considered as you consider your vote.
If it would have been something that didn't require a special use permit, I think that's what the purpose of this is, because it's allowed in RA, but not every plot of RA is suited for it. And I'm all for people doing what they want to with their property, but I think this is gonna have a detrimental effect to the neighbors.
Okay. Any further discussion? Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to deny or recommend denial.
I'll second. Moving to second to recommend denial. All in favor of recommending denial? Motion is carried. Ms. Adamson, the request has been recommended for denial. This goes up before the Board of Commissioners on September the 18th. They will make the final decision on this on September the 18th. So if you have if you're for this application or against this application and you have anything to say, that'll be said before the Board of Commissioners on September the 18th. Application for variance. Presentation of 20-16, Brian Weaver is requesting a front setback reduction from the required 40-foot to 38-foot for the construction of primary residence. Tax map parcel L16-137, Shadow Lane. Someone here to speak for Mr. Weaver. If you would, please come forward. And if you're both going to speak, please put your name and address for both of you there on the piece of paper.
I'm trying to, sorry, we're in a rental. We just got in a rental. I'm trying to remember the address. What? What? That's not our mail address. Sorry about that.
Please state your name.
Brian Weaver.
Okay. And give us a brief presentation as to your desire for or your reason for a variance.
Yes, sir. We located this lot on the lake over at Lot 41, Shadow Lane. As we did some, we were looking for a lot on the lake, and as we did some research into it, it's a bit peculiar. So the way it's laid out, there's You can call it a ravine. I don't think it's a creek. It's not a running tributary or anything like that. It takes runoff from the lots around it, and then it overflow from the lake, basically. And so it runs through the middle of the property, with core line just on the other side of it, and so it sort of shrinks where you can build because of the topography and that ravine that's located through the middle of it. So as we looked at it, we realized that we could not build on it with a 40-foot setback with the current property lines, which, as we dug into it a little more, have shifted a little over the years, it seems. The original plat we were looking at had it closer to the asphalt cul-de-sac that's there. The one that's on record here is actually a little bit further back past the right-of-way, which pushed the setback even further from where we thought it originally was. So we realized that even if we get the variance, we would have to choose a very small footprint home, which we've done. And we've worked with a builder throughout the process and we've also gotten a surveyor too, and I believe this is all in the packet that you guys have, to be able to make sure that we could fit the size footprint house that we picked out. Make sure there's room for septic, following all the other guidelines for setbacks for the side as well, and that there's enough room to stay 50 feet away from the ravine in terms of septic lines. And so we just need to be able to build closer, basically a couple of feet from the property line, but I don't want it to be a misunderstanding. The property line is not actually where the asphalt meets the grass. It's actually,
About 40 feet back.
yeah, it's actually back a good bit.
So from the asphalt to the property line is about 40 feet where the utilities are, and we don't own that. And so our property starts after that. So our house will look like it's about 42 feet from the road still.
I'm sorry, could I get your name as well?
Carmen Weaver.
Yes, ma'am.
And I did speak with all the property owners adjacent to our property, and they were in favor, and you have their signatures.
If you could additionally speak to the .64 acres going down to .5 acres, or whatever that was?
Yeah, so basically, the original plat, which I believe was from '83, somewhere around in there, basically had the property line at where the cul-de-sac, where the asphalt is.
Okay.
And then when the one that's on record now, which I forgot what year that was, maybe 2015, it actually put it back another.
It finally takes into account the setback for the county.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we're talking about 2 feet from that, which is initially probably some 20 to 30 feet back. Yeah, so.
Okay. Are there any questions to the applicant? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, at this time we'll close the board for discussion. Gentlemen? Any discussion? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moving a second to approve the variance. All in favor? Motion is carried 5-0. Mr. and Ms. Weaver, your variance has been approved. Application for rezoning, ZA 20-06, Victor Vasemiller is requesting to rezone 4.001 acres, tax map parcel 098-027-009 from RA to RSR for the purpose of subdividing the property, Goodson Road. Someone here to, if you would, please come forward. Write your name and address on the piece of paper that's there on the podium. If you would, please state your name.
My name is David Vasemiller, representing Victor Vasemiller, his son.
if you would give us a brief presentation as for your desire to rezone this piece of property.
Yep, so we're actually selling the property, and the purchasers of the property had requested us to rezone it from RA to RSR. They're planning on building around a 3,500 square foot home. On the 2-acre parcel, there's 2 2-acre parcels. And on the other 2-acre parcel, so both of them are gonna have about the same size homes on them.
So is it one builder gonna build 2 houses?
2 separate.
2 separate, okay, so you already have someone looking to buy each parcel on either side?
2 separate people, yes.
Okay, 2 separate people buying that. And how long have you had this property? Or has your father had the
My
property?
dad's owned it since 2016.
Okay. 2, 1, 6. You have a total of 6 acres at this time?
It's 4 acres, so 2 2-acre parcels,
Okay.
and then there's another 6-acre tract, but we're not selling that one at the moment.
Are there any questions to the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, at this time we'll close it to the board for discussion. Gentlemen, do you have any discussion for the rezoning?
These lots are already carved out, so I don't see any issue with it.
Is there a motion?
Motion to recommend approval.
Second.
Moved and second to recommend approval. All in favor? Motion is carried 5-0. Mr. Vase Miller, we have voted to recommend the rezone of your property. It will be heard by the Board of Commissioners on September the 18th. Once again, anyone who is either in favor or in opposition will need to present their case to the Board of Commissioners on September the 18th. Thank you. ZA 20-07, Jim King, OBO Trimark 400 LLC, is requesting a CPCD zoning stipulation amendment for tax map parcel 107-319, 107-319-005, 107-319-004, 107-319-002, to remove the age restrictions on residential units within the currently zoned parcels, Blue Ridge Highway, or Parkway. For someone here, Mr. King, if you would please come forward, write your name and address on a piece of paper on the podium. Additionally, if you would, please, for the record, state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim King, 131 Prominence Court, Suite 230, Dawsonville, Georgia. Here tonight representing Trimark 400 LLC. This is a case that y'all, I think every one of you were on the Planning Commission 3 years ago. It was in 2017. We came before you with a group called Richmond Honan that wanted to do a continuing care facility, and which included assisted living, apartments, medical office, hotel, and some retail areas. So Richmond Honan ended up backing out, and then since then we've been trying to market the property, and we keep running across the same issue over and over. The property was zoned for 300 residential units, and there was, I guess on the plan it was noted as independent living, but there was no restriction that said, you know, that was what age restriction on that. But in our letter of intent, we stated that, you know, it was going to be geared towards 55 and older. There was a, one of the zoning stipulations set in, again, independent living, but what we're finding is the market is not deep enough to support 300 independent living units or 55 and older. We did about, so I don't know, 6-8 months ago, we submitted another site plan to the planning department, and the site plan was approved. You know, it moved some things, had the same elements as the Richmond Honan plan, moved some items around a little bit, but it, you know, it was not a significant difference. So the site plan was approved, but when we requested a letter saying, you know, it was that we could do that with the apartments with no age restriction. They came back and said, well, you really need to go back through the process again to do that, even though it's not a zoning condition. It was stated in a letter of intent. It was going to be geared towards 55 and older, or it might have been restricted towards 55 and older. And so because of that, we stand before you today. We do have another group that's interested in the property. And again, the same issues come up, where they think they might be able to do, maybe it's 100 units of 55 and older, but they can't do 300. And it's not viable without the 300 units. So what we're asking is just to remove any stipulations on the age restriction, remove any age restriction on it. All the same elements are still there, still got assisted living, still got retail, still got medical office. We still have a hotel cited for one of the sites. The only thing would be the lifting the age restriction. That's why I'm here tonight.
Okay, on our ZA 17-09 stipulations, stipulation number 2. Stipulation number 2 says any deviation of intent or plans as set forth in this amendment shall be subject to review.
Yep.
So you're coming forward before us because one of the stipulations does say that if there is a deviation of intent. The
Okay.
only place where you've told us that the intent is 55 and older was in your initial intent statement.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So in essence, the stipulation does say if you deviate from intent, then you'd have to come back before us.
So that's why, that's the reason we're,
Yes, sir.
okay,
Yes,
gotcha. Okay, makes sense.
Any
It
questions?
was a letter of intent, so that,
It was a letter of intent, and stipulation number 2 does say any deviation of intent. So
that makes sense.
that being the case. Any questions to the applicant? So just to clarify, you do still plan to have 141,000 square foot of assisted living space,
Yes, sir.
70,000 square foot of hotel space, 31.5 of retail, and 130,000 square feet of office space.
That's
Is that
correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, at this time we'll close the board for discussion. Gentlemen, do you have any discussion on the removal of the wording of 55 plus in the statement of intent?
I got a question for Jameson. It also says remove stipulation number 2.
Yeah, the recommendation from the planning department is to remove that stipulation number 2 that talks about any deviation of intent or plan set forth in this amendment shall be subject to review by the Director of Planning and Development. It was just a recommendation from legal when they looked it over. Any deviation from it should come back to this board for this board's approval and as well as the board of
So it's been
Commissioners.
replaced by the next sentence, where you say remove stipulation 2. That's the new wording?
Just remove it altogether.
Okay, but it would have to come back before.
It will have to go back before the board, yes.
So they're just saying 2 is just kind of redundant to be in there,
Yes.
because it would have to come back with or without it.
It should come back before the board,
Okay.
yes, as a zoning change. If we're gonna change from the letter of intent or the concept plan, it should be a zoning change and should come back before the Board of Commissioners for approval.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Moving a second, all in favor? Motion is carried 5-0. Our recommendation will be to go forward to the Board of Commissioners to allow this, Mr. King. But it will be heard September the 18th as well, so keep that in mind as we go forward. ZA 20-08, Fox Creek Properties Incorporated is requesting to rezone tax map parcel 112-109, 104-065, 112-019, 112-013, 113-057-002, 112-018 from RA, RPC, CHB, PCD COI to mixed-use village for the purpose of developing single-family, multifamily, retail, commercial, office, hotel, and light industrial uses. Georgia 400 Lumpkin Campground Road. Is someone here for Fox Creek Properties? If you would, please come forward. Write your name and address on the piece of paper that's there on the podium. For the record, please state your name.
Kenneth Wood. Did y'all have the, oh, awesome. So I can just tell you and you can click through it. So wanted to run through kind of a presentation also just to re-antiquate, because there's been so much history on the property throughout the years and kind of how it started and everything. So the property as you see it, that's off Lumpkin and 400, today the proposal is 520 acres. And so previously, the existing zoning, and we'll go through it, was a much shorter property, not much, I would say probably about 150 acres less. This piece of property, the entire property actually stretches all the way to the Etowah. And so to kind of re-antiquate exactly how it stretches, it's all the way from 400 back to the river, but not across the river, because I know there's been lots of different proposals over the last couple of years that kind of stretched and did that, so I want to make sure that was understood about how it sits. So the property today was broken up. It was originally intended to be basically the Southern Catholic College that would build a campus there and have student housing there and a lot of different other mixed-use retail uses up toward the front of it. And so in looking at that, when that got zoned, it ended up getting zoned, as you mentioned, all the different categories, the RPC, the CHB, the PCD, and the CO and I for the office uses. And so when we looked at the parcel and started planning through it not too long ago, we came up with, in talking with staff, that the mixed-use village would be the best way to consolidate everything into one. And then as we started there and started getting into it, we started with the transportation network of the property. If you can go over to can I do a couple more? Those are the land use plans. One more. Okay, perfect. So this is the plan I brought with me just to kind of go back over this one more time. This was the original plan, and that property did not stretch all the way to the river. And so that's why you see that gap with the agricultural zoning that runs to the back. But that was the campus. Our layout is really not all that different than how it's zoned today. We have our mixed-use village up at the front, and then it starts going toward the residential in the back, and I'll explain how we came to that and how we broke up that. And if you look at the next slide, that was one of the previous partitions that was brought forward probably a year or a little bit more ago, that was probably 4 or 5 times this in terms of commercial, residential, rental housing. And you have our new plan that we come up with. And so the way we approach the property with the traffic is we had the location off of Lumpkin Campground. We've continued conversations to also get a second access point a little further up Lumpkin, but right now that was not a possibility. So we have the access point there. We're basically, actually, I guess about 2 hours ago, James, we started getting in some feedback from the Mountain District in terms of our DRI. And so the project would fall within that. We'll comply with any of the stormwater traffic recommendations, but we know there's going to be improvements on Lumpkin Campground at that intersection that we would create, as well as at the 400 intersection. There's some different curvature in the way that intersection approaches 400 that can be improved, and so we know that that will come up as part of our application that would really start coming forward here very soon. We also have another access point that you can see off of Georgia 400 that splits between, and then that came back to kind of how we started originating the property. So when we first started talking about this, it was originally looked at as commercial, the multifamily, kind of an office grouping, and then having the for sale residential behind it. And so as we've gotten in more discussions with the Development Authority, the plan has changed into what you see today, which is the commercial that's up on the front, and that would be a hotel. It's roughly 125 keys up on the very front of the site. And so the site has a flat pad, then it drops down to the creek. So it actually forms good commercial out parcels right up on the front on 400 that you can see there. Just to the left of the entrance would be, we set it aside as a potential fire station location that could be used for development for the county for a fire station. It's roughly about 3 or 4 acres. We've actually designed our firm several of them, and it should situate fairly well with the topography there. And then behind it, once the road crosses over, that's where we start getting the link between Lumpkin and the road coming from 400. And so that's where roughly about a 50-acre light industrial pad would be there. That could be a future pad in cooperation with the Development Authority. And then we have the multifamily phase that we consolidated tightly with the commercial. So that's roughly 47,000 square feet of commercial, so that we have a viable retail use. And if you can kind of see, we turn the retail inward so that we have green space and open space behind it, so it can be a place when all this stuff passes that people can gather again out in outdoor courtyard spaces and be able to enjoy the restaurants and have outdoor places the kids can play or you can gather and sit. And then the multifamily behind it has its amenity in the loop road, and then it goes into the rest of the development. And then we broke it out into a couple of different size homes as you go back up through there. And really the driving factor of this site, and the reason we believe that, you know, the way Fox Creek is looking at this is really the right way for the properties. We've already gone out and spent tremendous amount of time and energy figuring out, you know, how much rock there is, you know, what type of trees, you know, what do the creeks look like, what are the environmental issues. And so we came up with the plan to actually go off of those answers. And so the plan that we have today, we actually are riding the ridges of the plan. We're not getting too close to the creek. We're leaving the entire western portion open. It's environmentally sensitive. We know there's been a lot of plans that looks at pushing really close to the river, but it makes sense to stay up on the ridges, work with the topography, be able to control the stormwater, be able to have a really nice homes that sit up on the crest and on the top of the hills. And so that's how we formulated the entire for-sale land, is in between the creeks, not getting it too close to the creeks where it's falling down the hills. As you can see, you know, you can see where the creeks are, and you can see that there's plenty of land beyond it. And so we wanted to make sure to consolidate it as you go through there. Stormwater ponds, we have them located throughout the entire site. We realize that about 3/4 of the way up, you're in the tier 1 for the Etowah. And so we know we have to do a over and above great job of the stormwater management with our ponds, with our holding it, and not only not releasing that first flush, but also holding it for water quality and stormwater management from it. If you can go to the next slide, I did a comparison. It actually increased over what we were first looking at when we first submitted. But this was kind of the driving force. As I said, we were riding the ridges. But you can see on there, I highlighted, not even highlighting inside the commercial or inside the multifamily, and not inside any of the light industrial, but just the peripheral of the amount of open space. The code required open space was 35%. And so that plan that I have highlighted, that is 54% open space. So we feel like by the time we calculate all the open space inside the uses, this plan is probably getting up closer to 60%. And that's really just because as we started exploring where the rock were, where the streams and the rest of the larger trees on the site were, if we started kind of dropping down into those valleys with trying to develop the lots, we ended up chasing grade out, and we were disturbing a ton of land for no reason, just to try to, you know, force things in. And so that's how we ended up getting to the plan. The way you look at the topography, and the reason we didn't go further west. It's also the reason that further west there is a potential other access point down on the bottom, but it is like dropping off a cliff, and the amount of work, it's kind of a blind curve, so there's a lot of engineering issues as well as topography and environmental issues for not trying to run all the way back down to that location with that curve on there. If you can kind of go through, I've got some different ones for the Lennar product, and just kind of keep flipping through all the way to the back. They go from, these are the homes that would be on the lots that are up closer to the front. And if you go through one more slide, and it flips over to the, hey, one more. I put a lot in here. Those are the homes as you go more toward the back, the larger homes. So right now, there's a plan to have ranch-style homes. There's also plans to have traditional 2-story homes, as you see here on them. So that range, the ranch style that would be just interspersed in there, that would be 1,600 to 1,800, 1,900. The traditional homes are going to be 1,800 up to 3,000 square feet. And the price range, from what they told me, would start in the upper twos, right around 3, and then go into the low 4s. And so that would be the price range for these. The multifamily, we have some pictures of those. They are looking at doing a really high-end multifamily to complement the for sale and also the retail for this area. And so that would, in order to accomplish that type of architecture that we were looking at, roughly the rents would be $1.40. I know there's always discussion about what that would be, but if on 1,000 square feet, that'd be roughly about $1,400 for that unit going in there. And as we looked, as we said, to be totally clear too, a couple of days ago, I was telling Jameson, we actually thought that because of the DRI, that we were going to be pushed about 60 days out. And so if if there's any comments from the neighbors, we were perfectly okay with deferring and doing that. But we wanted to come forward to present the project. We really think it's a good project, and we've taken care of the land that's been provided to us in order to work with it and not work against it, like you see so many different times, and try to find the best methods. We're also working with the Development Authority now for a sewer outfall that would provide sewer all the way up through to the basin, and then also water connections that would dual feed from 53 as well down to Lawrenceville, Lumpkin Campground on the bottom there. And so that would provide the capacity for the project going through there. I don't believe there is a feed off 400, and so we have not explored that dual feed on that place. And so with that, I'll leave any remaining amount of time and can answer any questions.
Could you speak to Fox Creek Properties? Are you an
Sure.
engineering firm, developing
Sure.
firm? What are you?
So I'm Kenneth Wood, so I'm with Planners and Engineers Collaborative, so I'm on the engineering side. Bill Varinga is here with Fox Creek, and Bill Adams is the owner of Fox Creek. So Bill's been around forever doing subdivisions. He owns wetland banks. He does a lot of different things. He also does a lot of industrial projects. And so he's also been in the banking world as well. And so that's how my relationship is with him. But I have Bill with us that can answer anything from the development side.
Is Fox Creek looking to purchase the property?
Yes, they would be purchasing the property, and they would be building to sell lots for Lennar, yes.
Building to sell lots for Lennar?
Yes, yeah. They would be the horizontal developer. That's correct.
What about phasing? You looking at building any one particular part of it first?
Sure,
or-
sure. So what we've looked at, that's probably the best one to see it. We know there's interest on the, some of the commercial and some of the multifamily side. And with the Development Authority, it sounds like the light industrial is a very big push for the area to get something going there. And so getting the spine road from 400 down to Lumpkin and then pushing over, and then you have the two subdivisions that are basically a right phase and a left phase, and then getting across that creek so that you could start pushing to the back. And so that would kind of be the first phase of it, so that you can start working on the lots that would go east, and then you could also start on the west. But you have that spine road is going to be really important so that the multifamily can work on their own and not be held up by others. And so it's really important for us to get that road network in so that then the phasing can be autonomous to each other. And so the only part of that is that very back area is obviously moving up back through there. That would be at a later phase, just because of, it's a long way to move back through there. But we think when you get back there, it's pretty amazing.
Historically, we've seen several developments come
Right.
to this particular area as well. And there's always been an interest to get the residential in without doing the commercial in several different phases. Would you be opposed, or would Mr. Bill be opposed to making certain that things are phased together so that you can't just come in and do all residential and just forget about the commercial component up at the front?
Sure, and I can let Bill speak to that, if you know.
If you would, please write your name and address on the piece of paper that's there. If you would, please state your name.
My name is Bill Varenga with Fox Creek Properties. And could you repeat your question again?
My question is, would you be opposed to a timeline stipulation that says that if you're putting in your residential, you have to have a certain amount of commercial component already ongoing?
I think the market would dictate what we'd want to, we certainly want to start with the, as Ken said, the spine road in the front.
Certainly.
And we would be looking to push the, I can't see the darn thing, I'm sorry. Coming in off of Lumpkin Campground.
Right.
And pushing that spine, and then going left and right, trying to work toward Pad C. I think we've talked about working with the Development Authority on Pad C for a light industrial piece.
Right.
I think it depends on the time frame of commitments from buyers for the apartment, the rental units, as well as the commercial piece. I don't, well, that's a tough one. I don't think we could commit to a timeline particularly at this time.
Okay.
That's,
It would certainly be more appealing, just on a personal standpoint.
Yes, sir.
To see the light industrial, to see some of the commercial components developed, other than Fox Creek coming in and saying, okay, we want to put the multifamily in, so that's our first thing. We're gonna put the multifamily in.
Sure.
And then at some point, we may or may not come with the light industrial and the commercial. Because we have seen several things over the years come, and CPCD, for instance, Commercial Plan Comprehensive Development.
Right.
It'll come in, put in the residential phase, and just forego the commercial phase.
right.
And we're left, as a county, we're left with another subdivision, or in this particular case, another multifamily subdivision, without the commercial component being developed. So I was curious if you were
Well,
willing to be tied.
here's how I'd say, here's another way to answer that question.
Okay.
We're committing to buy the land, okay? And so the way we make money is not to buy the land and to hold the land. I would say the way we make money, and that's why we do this, candidly, is to resell that land. And so I think we're heavily incented to resell the land. I don't think we're going to buy it, hold it, and just sit on it and continue to pay taxes and let it get overgrown, et cetera. We would be incented to sell it based on the price of the land and wanting to work through the entire project. So I know that doesn't commit to a timeline to you.
Certainly.
But what I'm saying to you is we are incented to sell the land, not just sit and hold it.
Okay. Also, for instance, you've shown me in your presentation the multifamily portion with some pictures.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that something that you're tied to, or is that just a concept design?
That's right. That, yes.
We don't want it to be the,
Yeah, go ahead.
when we talked about it, we were talking about there's so many of them that you see that are kind of lower story and they don't look very good over the years and they
Yes.
end up with like a vinyl thing. So no, we're talking about doing more of a Class A market rate.
Okay. But as far as the zoning portion, if this were rezoned for multifamily without somehow tying you to what I'm seeing in front of me, then you could come in with a lower end multifamily development. Agreed?
I mean, I would think that you guys would stipulate I mean, what we're used to is seeing stipulation of materials and different type of things to make sure it is Class A.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions to the applicant?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Couple of questions that popped up. I want to make sure to get in. This has nothing to do with the previous developer. You have no ties to the previous developer that was there. I think it was Etowah Village or whatever it was originally.
Yeah, it was yeah, that's right. We partners or something, so, yeah.
There's no connection?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Another, as far as a mixed type of structural, residential, industrial, or the plan that you have, I think you kind of answered this question already, but how are they tied to each other as far as like a live-work community? Is that what you're hoping for, or
Yes,
how are you trying to tie this?
So they're not vertically integrated. Those, I've looked at a lot of those in so many places, and those
have issues starting. That's why you don't typically see the vertical integration starting because of the cost of the podium slabs. And so what we're looking at doing is having the retail up on the front, and as the spine road goes in, you know, it wouldn't just be trees, you know, sitting there for the commercial, which helps, you know, the value of the commercial and helps the commercial come in faster. And for the multifamily, to do a Class A multifamily that is right behind that commercial and that is literally right beside the light industrial. Now, the light industrial does have a lot of dependency on what the Development Authority wants to see there, but our understanding is there's extreme demand for that use. And so what we're working on currently is just, we're working on, you know, grading plans for how much exact usable area that can be achieved there. And we know it's a lot, you know, 40-something acres of the 50. But I think to answer your question is, the idea would be that, you know, within that one little pod, that you would have everything within walking distance, you know, from your unit. And even if you're back here in the for sale units, you know, I would see this type of development as a kind of a golf cart community that people would, you know, drive them down the road and come to the shops. And so it's just, once you get all the way to the very back, it's obviously a very linear property. It's a little bit further, but we would see it as very connected. I mean, that's the idea for it.
I had put a stipulation on the other developer as far as, because you're doing it looks like you're trying to do stages, okay? One, we want to make sure we don't pad grade, where you come in and you still, you know, from one part of the property to offset dirt in another part that you're trying to build on. We don't want pad grading. Would that be a problem? As far as, because then you end up, you end up grading the whole property out, you end up.
I don't see, I mean, it would be done as, it would just be done as it went in pods. And so we feel like, the way we've looked at it with the borings we've done in the rock, we feel like they can be autonomous.
Okay.
And so we're fine, totally fine with that.
Traffic studies. I'm sure you'll have to do traffic studies and all that. Would you be up for since this thing is opening in time, not just one traffic study up front, there may be a requirement put up by engineering to do a second traffic study as other part, maybe they stipulate out after Pod C, when Pod F develops, another traffic study would be done to determine any infrastructure changes or any roadway or improvements like that. Would you be open to that?
I mean, Bill could probably, I mean, I see that, the way we have to do the DRI study, as I was looking at the comments briefly, they literally just came in 3 hours ago, started coming in from the Mountain District, and I was flipping through them. The way we have to do that traffic study, I would imagine it would be, you know, pretty easy to just update as the phase goes, because it's like you're saying, I mean, someone could come in and just do 250 on the multifamilies, right? And then the restaurant could end up being 5,000 instead of 6,000, so I totally understand that.
Okay.
And we don't, in the light industrial, I mean, it's the authority said, you know, is talking about the demand of it is high, but we don't know what that translates into yet, so.
So there hasn't been traffic study hasn't been done yet, so.
So our understanding, that what we're moving toward through is that right after planning commission, we'd move into the traffic study, and then we wouldn't go before the commissioners until the Mountain District is done, all the traffic studies is completely done.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, on the fire station, are you guys donating the property for that? What are the details on that?
That's my understanding. That was our understanding. We were setting it aside. We had it reserved as just open space land, and then before we submitted, there was some discussion about would it fit on there. So we were showing that it would fit on there. That would be part of kind of that industrial land behind it.
But you'd be donating it
Yeah.
to the, okay. Grant Road, on the previous, what we saw last year, there at one point was access on Grant Road.
No.
Is there any? Okay. Fire access, I think that our subdivision requirements actually would usually require another access point. How do you plan to address that?
So there's a couple of options as it grows and develops. We've been talking, and Bill knows more about this, we've been talking to one of the landowners on Lumpkin that actually has some property there that would line up. I can't remember the name, forgetting the name of the
Yeah,
The road right across.
Kylo.
That runs right across, and then, or we also have the ability under the nationwide, because when you look at the plan, it seems crazy, but we're actually not crossing many creeks. We walked it and like literally scoped it out before they did the testing out there. And so we don't have, but really the one creek crossing coming across 400, so we could easily prepare another crossing that would gain the third access point behind the fire station going out to 400 too, as well for that frontage. So if you're looking at it, it'd be right across from the multifamily, kind of on the edge of that pond.
But I'm thinking, Jameson, what is the requirement? Would that satisfy the requirement? Or does it need to be typically farther back because of all the lots?
Well, that's definitely something we would want to, you know, at this stage, it's just a concept. This project would still have to come through a second phase of zoning, which we would require more traffic studies and things. And when it comes to access, you know, I'd probably defer to the fire department to make sure that, you know, there's adequate fire access to every portion of this development.
I mean, if we had, like, you know, there is the back portion, you know, we think that it's from a, you know, environmental and from other reasons that it's, has some issues, but if we had to give the fire department some access, we'll definitely figure that out.
And if I may just add to that, and that's definitely something that we would discuss further, you know, as we move into more of the development plan and start talking about the phases of development, and we have that second round of stipulations about facades and types of signage and stuff that's gonna come with the master plan of the second phase of this zoning.
And then finally, the open space, I know you mentioned 54%. I think the original plans, I was 42.
Yeah, so when we went through there, we basically measured, you know, some of the round areas, and we didn't know how big that light industrial, so we just gave a conservative effort. So that's why before coming here, I wanted to remeasure it and just get a feel for it, because and just looking at it, I was like, I know it's over 50, and so I just wanted to get a feel for what it was.
So are you willing to commit to 54%?
Yes, absolutely.
Open space? Okay.
Absolutely.
And of that open space, I know John kind of talked about it with the pad grading. How much of that will y'all be able to keep undisturbed?
Quite a bit of it. I mean, literally, there's probably 35% that's just undisturbed on that entire western side. And so most all of those areas that we measured will be undisturbed. I mean, I'd say there may be a variation of 8% or something,
Right.
just where the lot grades
Right.
go out some, but it's substantial.
Okay.
It's substantial. And just when that plan is harder to see, but when you look at that open space plan, you look at the topo and kind of see where we literally kind of rode when we walked it, rode the ridges and flagged it, it rides on the topo.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see the topo on a little, when you're looking at it, when it's small like
It's a steep
that.
property, and so
Yeah.
it's definitely the right way to do it, where to the left of the multifamily or to the west of the multifamily, that was the only real consolidated pod. That's where the college started, and if you go out there today, it's kind of, you know, weird.
Right.
Kind of walking, and the structures are there and everything, but that's where it's kind of flat, and so we're able to do that up on
Yeah.
the ridge. But even when you get to the back, they're just kind of riding the ridge lines.
And that's probably more cost effective for y'all as
It's
well.
just for a lot of different ways, you know, if we're trying to do a community that's on the Etowah, and what Bill wants to do with the for sale, he loves, you know, for sale product. He's been a home builder for a long time, including his son too. And so for what they want to do, being able to ride the ridges and have the homes with that setting, with the river, and then all in the undisturbed land, that's kind of the idea for that property.
Okay.
Kind of revisiting what Jason brought up, I know it's early stages for planning and all the things that you're putting together, but do you have any interest at all in light industrial commercial at this point?
So we haven't, so we're pretty early on into it, and so all of the discussions on the light industrial are through the development authority, and so that is all ongoing right now in terms of, and I think that the conversations are about, you know, like having them kind of lead that charge for the light industrial, because they have so many of the comments.
And going back to what Jason mentioned earlier too, and I understand that you have an intent, you want to sell the property and make the money. A lot of times what happens, these developments come in and they make their return on their investment without ever doing the commercial part of it, so it's easy to walk away from it because you're really not losing. By the time you compare, what you have to spend to finish it out, it's better off just to leave it there. So, at the end of the day, we see a lot of these, as I mentioned, and, that commercial light industrial component is, I think, very vital and important. I agree something needs to be done with the property. It's been vacant for a long time, and, it's kind of sketchy down there too, with some things that go on. And so I'm not sure if this is what needs to be done there, but I definitely agree something needs to happen there. But I do think the light industrial and commercial component, it needs to be some kind of stipulations there, I think.
As far as the impact of your development, as your traffic studies come in and stuff like that, there's understood that there'll be a project improvement, based on your traffic study, based on the needs of the road systems and what would be required. Would that be done up front? As far as any road improvement that's done to Lumpkin Campground, once the traffic study, that would
It
need.
would be required. It would be-
Required.
Right. My understanding is, the first meeting, this meeting would be kind of the land use, and then we would move second phase into like the fine details, and then that study would probably get incorporated into, conditions of zoning that would say that, we have to install the right turn lane, do this, straighten out the road. Whatever it is that comes out of those studies with the Mountain District would be a part of the requirement.
And as far as police, fire, and stuff like that, how do you offset the cost of those services that we require for a development like this?
Well, I mean, to me, just me looking at it, with what they're talking about with the Development Authority, with the light industrial, and then the amount of the homes in terms of being 3s to 4s, from what I know in terms of the values, those should be expensive enough homes that they pay for the services over and above of what it is, and then also the multifamily and the commercial will do that as well.
Okay.
So I think the components that we put together with it being dominated by really nice for sale, but then also having a good light industrial pad would be above the tax digest.
And this is probably something I should know, but just the way that things work here on y'all's unused portions of the property, the undisturbed or whatever.
Yes, sir.
When this is built out, who retains ownership of that? Is that going to go into
It would be the HOA.
like a HOA?
Yeah.
Okay, so they would,
Unless there was a reason, I'm guessing it would, I know it would be the HOA unless there's a reason.
yeah.
that the
I just
county
didn't know
has-
what was typical, and I kind of thought that, but I wasn't sure what y'all's.
Right.
Yeah.
I see a lot of them where, when it's that massive, like on that western side, sometimes, counties get, the federal grants and with open space and everything, but, other than that, it would definitely be the HOA. And that's
Yeah.
why leaving most of it, as much of it undisturbed as we can is beneficial for the HOA too.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone to speak in opposition to the application? If you would, please come forward, write your name and address on the piece of paper there on the podium. And for the record, please state your name.
I'm Hugh Stowers Jr. I live at 800 Hugh Stowers Road. I got a few things I'd like to know. Do you care about the water quality supply for Dawson County? People are the most filthy animals on earth. The plan shows the residential area next to the river. If you think the people are going to stay out of this river, then you need to go ahead and approve the Secrest and destroy the quality of water we got. If you want taxpayers to pay for ambulances, fire trucks, and many other necessary items to make a fire station, they offer. Have you seen any plans for the fire station? No. Are there any? No. We're already sponging off our neighbors and using their staff and ambulances, you need to go ahead and approve this request so we can sponge some more. We can't paddle our own canoe. The documents presented to our planning and zoning states the only entrance and exit to in residential areas is Lumpkin Campground Road. If you think the developer needs to make this a 4-lane road and turning lanes, then you need to go ahead and approve this request. They're not gonna do it, not unless you make them. There's no way that Lumpkin Campground Road can handle what they want to put there. The plans for these documents submitted by the developer to the planning and zoning states, there will be 941 single-family dwellings and 288 multifamily housing units. Combined, this shows 1,229 dwellings. Those much smarter than I am figure there's an average of 2 children per dwelling to be educated, which amounts to a total of 2,458 children. If you think the taxpayer should pay for the cost of their education, then you need to go ahead and approve this. If you think we need more retail stores, according to the empty stores at the outlet mall and other locations, then you need to go ahead and approve this request. If you think we need to be like Atlanta and the other areas down there by showing us buildings, then you need to allow them to strip the natural beauty and reduce our tourist business just to prevent helping the citizens of Dawson County with their taxes. We're a commuter county because of no manufacturing and industrial business. Our major problem is transportation. If you think we need to fill up tracts of land near the roads we have and development and do not need, as well as forcing our citizens to spend more time traveling to and from work, then you need to go ahead and approve this request, okay? Make it harder for them to make a living. In conclusion, I read last week in the Forsyth County paper, Amazon plans on building a warehouse in Forsyth County to serve Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. The article stated the developer 4 years ago wanted to fill this acreage with apartments on the same property. The residents were against the apartments because they knew it would increase their property taxes. The chamber also stated they agreed with the local residents about the large acreage that should be kept for jobs. I wish we had a chamber like that. We can get enough voices to speak against commissioners to have enough vision to refuse zoning these large tracts of land in order to save property for manufacturing and industry, which is profitable to the homeowners on their taxes. You know what's happening down already here in the county? I have given the commissioners a document, which I've provided with you, attached to it. Economic Development Office, State of Georgia, stating the same fact. If you feel, will you help me, or rather see senior citizens driven from their homes because they cannot pay their food, utilities, medical bills, and property taxes on their retirement pay, you need to go ahead and approve this.
Thank you, Mr. Stowers. Anyone else speak in opposition to the application? If you would, write your name and address on the piece of paper there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bruce Dunsel. I prepared a handout here to kind of summarize some points.
Yes, sir.
Proposed development, and I'm going off the application that was contained in your package, And given the preliminary state of the development proposal, I'll speak to it as I see it here, and I'm sure there's some other discussions that have been going on. We're ultimately recommending disapproval of the zoning request because we're ultimately recommending disapproval of the entire development. And I'll summarize some reasons why that is. I'll be going also on statements that were made in the planning staff report, as well as remarks from Sheriff Johnson and Fire Chief Bailey as well. This proposed development alone would add nearly 10% population to Dawson County. It has a massive impact. Obviously, it's very complex. It's very well structured in terms of the intricacies and the interdependence. As Mr. Bennett pointed out, one of the critical pieces of this is the light industrial infrastructure, which is totally undefined other than there's 30 acres designated for that. But that is a key piece because typically, as my experience is, that the property taxes in the county that the residents pay does not cover the infrastructure impacts that we're already looking at. And so industrial becomes critical to being able to provide the tax base that will actually support our maintenance of the infrastructure that's going to be needed around this. And I'll summarize some of those impacts as well. So a lot of my concerns also are beyond the 24 or so adjacent property owners that are impacted by this proposal. And getting their buy-in to this would be critical, obviously, as we saw in the first application this evening. Application does not address, but in fact it will expand our tax liabilities and the ratepayer costs for a number of things. One of them is water and sewer capacity beyond just what the extensions and so forth that the development itself will add. So we've got to be thinking about where's all this extra water going to be coming from, where's all the extra sewage going to be going, where is it going to be processed. None of those things that I could see are being addressed yet. Also the increased power needs in terms of the electrical power that this will require, new distribution, new transmission possibly. We don't know where the generation is going to be coming from, but clearly even additional substations and where that might be required. Expanding traffic, we've talked a little bit about that, traffic studies coming forward, but clearly the roads that we have are going to be degraded much more quickly. The planning staff estimated that the 10% increase in population would also include potentially as much as 3 times the number of people transiting in and out of the county. So the amount of transient traffic is going to be much higher than just the 10% of the folks that would be moving in, which is significant enough. As others have already mentioned, in terms of the increased county maintenance on public streets, one of the deepest problems we have is maintaining the infrastructure that we inherit from the feds, from the state government that's already been put in place, and maintaining that. And the taxes simply don't pay that. So we've seen splost after splost after splost, and on top of that, increases in property tax, even when the millage rate doesn't go up, which is kind of an anomaly there. Increased county maintenance, okay, expanded trash service and the impact on our landfill and adjacent landfills. There's a significant potential impact there, and I don't see that being addressed. Sheriff Johnson's already pointed out that current law enforcement is inadequate to cover this, particularly when you're talking about multifamily use homes. Typically domestic violences and those kind of things are a little higher, and it's a statistic. It's not saying it's going to happen here or anything like that, but typically the sheriff knows what he's getting into. We've seen these kind of developments already being proposed in Dawson, a lot of them going in, so he's got, I'm sure, a good base for understanding, well, what are we going to need going forward? Well, who's going to pay for that? Obviously, it's going to be the taxpayers. Same thing for emergency services and fire. Now, we might have a fire station with 3 bays, maybe on donated land, but by the time you look at the SPLOST wish list coming up, the cost of the fire engines alone, the cost of the building, the cost of maintaining all of that, cost of staffing, hiring additional firefighters, pensions, you've got to figure all of that in. The costs are going to be very, very significant, particularly when you're talking about high-density housing. It's one thing to put a fire out maybe in a food line or something like that that's a very lightly occupied building. It's another thing altogether when you have a 3-story multifamily, 288 units. Imagine the drain on the resources there and how that has to be accounted for. Also additional Staffing for the educational facilities, we mentioned that. It's, again, we're kind of guesstimating, well, how many students are going to be added to the student body in Dawson County? And we're looking at maybe even doubling or more the student population in the county just from this development. So again, hiring the teachers. We may have the facilities already in place, we don't know, but certainly additional staffing. And of course, the negative impacts to local businesses. We're in a downturn right now due to the reaction to this virus. And I think that the local businesses right now, we're very sensitive in terms of, competition coming in. I'm not sure we need more retail or office space. How much is already vacant? I don't know that there's been an assessment of that. How many apartments we're adding, hotels. Why are people going to even be staying in hotels here? Maybe tourist business, that would be good. But again, none of this is a part of the plan. The environmental impact to the Etowah, I don't think can be understated or in any way downplayed. We're looking at potentially an HOA picking up the cost of maintaining 30% of their space in green space. I've lived in HOAs. If you were to tell me that I'm going to start paying for 30% increase in the green space in my HOA dues, I would do the first thing I could to move and get out of there. I hate HOAs, but when you saddle them with that kind of debt, you're just asking for people to increase the transience of that. I didn't get into the costs of this, and I think that's really a business decision, and that was certainly beyond the application, so I won't speak to that. But the business considerations and the money and how the money is made and changed hands is very critical to this. Any agreements that you get, the words are fine. The application is filled out, and I think everything has been done according to the process here. But in terms of getting stipulations, words are fine, but we need stipulations in ironclad. They have to be enforceable. We can't go back and say, well, he said this, but here's what we really got. Been there, done that. We've seen developers come in and say, we're going to do this and this and this. It's not in writing. It doesn't happen, guaranteed. And that's true in business anywhere, so it's not anything specific there. The application does not address or provide any justification of need for this proposed development. I mean, we've got one going in up the street, or down the street, I guess, if you're looking south. And we've got other developments similar to this. What's the need for this? And again, market studies, that's their realm. They're in the process of, in the business of making money for that. But I think that's something that we've got to be considered because it's our impact. It's the stores we go to, it's the places we would shop, and so forth, and serving our community. The application doesn't provide any assurance or surety that the proposed development would be constructed or, if constructed, fully utilized. And I recognize that kind of assurance can't be made now because the properties are going to be resold. And other parties are going to come in and try to implement the plan that would be approved here. So again, we're recommending disapproval for those kinds of reasons. Provides no remedies in the event of financial or other hardships that could impact the completion or the utilization of this proposed development. Again, we get into a situation where we have an economic downturn and all of a sudden your hotelier backs out of the deal and you're left with a vacant building that now the county is going to have to deal with. So there has to be some mechanism in place for being able to deal with those kind of contingencies. And this is just typically what you would see in a contract for any kind of proposal like this. Application provides does not define or justify the claim that these developments, the mixed-use village, better lends themselves to long-term sustainability. I don't like that word. It has certain connotations with the United Nations and that sort of thing, but not to get into that here, but I'm not sure what that means. And if that's really a justification for why this should be approved, I think it really has to be defined and it has to be substantiated. The application proposes 288 apartments. In my experience, apartments distinctly diminish the property values for those who have single-family homes. I've seen it in Duluth and other communities around Atlanta. Proposed development's additional tax and the ratepayer impacts and its addition of more retail space is not quantifiable as far as what service does that really provide to the community. I mean, it sounds good on paper, hey, we're going to have more businesses, but in reality, I'm not sure there's a quantifiable service. Proposed development is not justified just because it's a location and its proximity to Georgia 400. That's no basis for saying that the proposed development is justified. It also pointedly ignores the traffic, the crime, the public safety concerns that citizens have shown. So again, just kind of summarizing what the planning staff has identified, what the sheriff's identified, the fire chief and others. So I would definitely look at that. There's also no capability of anyone to come in and guarantee that there's going to be light industrial to come in. Even if you have 30 acres there, we've seen situation after situation where governments at the county or the state level have to basically give away every possible tax benefit in order to entice businesses to come in and build in their location. And that's a pig in a poke, and it's something that no one can guarantee. But yet that is, I think, what you hit the nail on the head. That is the linchpin that would actually make something like this even feasible. Where all these people are coming from, why they would all work in that same 30-acre plot, that's a different story. But those are the kinds of decisions that I think we've seen made down at the perimeter with Mercedes-Benz and some of the others. And then all of a sudden you need transit, you need all this other infrastructure to support it. And as Mr. Sauer said, you know, Lumpkin County Campground Road is a 2-lane road, and we're not going to make it a 4-lane highway. And certainly the impacts to 400. And being that the major corridor anywhere near here for north and south, all the way to the perimeter, all the way up to past Dahlonega, to add this kind of an impact to that artery, I think we're just buying ourselves a massive maintenance nightmare. So again, I just reflect the fact that this development, as beautiful as it is, I think it'd be great for DeKalb County. It's not for Dawson. That's not why we move here. That's not why we live here. That's not why we stay here. So I again urge you to disapprove, not just the zoning request, but also disapprove this development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else speak in opposition to the application? If you would, please come forward. Write your name and address on the piece of paper there on the podium.
My name is Keith Pagel. I live at 334 Brights Way, which is basically directly abuts where this, you know, proposed development would go. So it's Savannah Trace neighborhood. And actually, if you look at the plans as they've kind of drawn them out, where the, you know, one of the creeks comes through that directly goes through my property, okay, on the side. So I'd be, you know, very close to the very edge of where you see that, I don't know if they called it Pod C. But I'm worried about the impacts because it is so very close to my house. I'm worried about some of the other things that have been mentioned with respect to, can they really do what they say and preserve the quality of the land, runoff? I mean, that's a lot of homes. 1,000, 1,200 homes in that small of an area. It's overkill. All of the things that have been stated are things that are on, you know, my mind in terms of, you know, the traffic. You'll never get that many people on Lumpkin Campground Road. Could you imagine trying to get everybody out at 6 o'clock in the morning, down 400? It's not gonna happen. It'll cause backups, it'll cause nightmares, the crime. We have one high school, we have a junior high, we have a middle school, we have a few elementary schools. You know, I've heard some things in the marketing that they said, hey, we might have, this might be more, you know, senior citizens, older population. But what I'm seeing is it looks like it's gonna be more for families. So there's gonna be a lot of kids. Where are those kids gonna be educated? How much is that gonna cost? You know, all the other things that have been mentioned, the police, the fire. It's too many people in a concentrated area. I think the land will be destroyed. I honestly feel that way. I mean, yes, this is not going directly, or it's going directly to, but it's not going across the Etowah River. But there's still gonna be tremendous impacts to the land. There's no guarantee that they can do what they say they're gonna do and preserve the land. It's lip service, right? I just feel like it's too big. Maybe something needs to be done with the land, because I know that there's, you know, the structures that are back there are falling apart, but I think this is just too overdone. Too close to my property. I'm tremendously worried about the impact of noise. Already, I don't know who owns the property now, if Fox Creek owns it or somebody else, but they're already have taken earth movers back there, and we could hear them knock down large swaths of trees. Don't know if they're allowed to do it, but they've done it. And I can only imagine when they start building a community this size, the amount of noise. It's gonna be horrendous. And then once it's built, it's, you know, the quality of life and why I moved to Dawson County. And I realize I'm, you know, where I live in that neighborhood, I'm close to 400, but I shouldn't have put up with a 1,200 home neighborhood directly behind. Our neighborhood has like 35, 40 homes, all separated. It was, people bought there for quality of life. That's why people live here, just like others have stated. And so I don't want to see this become the next Alpharetta coming downtown. And that's what'll happen if we keep approving neighborhoods like this. And I'm not saying you guys don't look at these things carefully. This is not a good idea. This is not a good idea. And, you know, I'm not saying something shouldn't be done on the land. Maybe something should be done, but it needs to be a much smaller scale and much better thought out. Don't think we need more retail. We've got enough vacant office space all over the Atlanta area. Light industrial, maybe, have to be really well defined, and I don't think it has been. So I would vote to disapprove this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else speak in opposition to the application? If you would, please come forward, write your name and address on a piece of paper on the podium.
My name is Beth Martin. I live at 586 Brights Way. And I agree with him. There have been moving and knocking trees over out there. My mother has heard it when she's sitting out on the front porch. In April 2019, the first time this mixed-use village was presented to the planning committee, you voted to recommend denial on this project based on affecting the property values of the surrounding properties, which includes mine, affecting the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, and imposing special hardships on surrounding property owners and the environmental impact to the Etowah River. In the summer of 2019, the citizens learned that the county doesn't have enough emergency services for its current residents. Many of the new zoning approvals of 2019 haven't even begun to impact us as a county, and yet more big developments keep being approved. Who's going to build and outfit this new fire station? Or, as we found, we're just being given this plot of land like before, and the citizens will pay for the developer's impact. The developer who is only out to make as much money as possible. The homes appear to me to be like zero lot line houses based on what the information in the packet was at 4,800 to 7,200 square feet, not even an acre. I mean, all the houses in the area have at least, or most of them have at least an acre, if not more. This high density doesn't fit within the current surrounding residential, as most of the immediate areas have at least 1 acre. Again, a developer who wants to maximize his profit at the expense of the current county residents. And there were very few details laid out in the initial application. I learned a lot more here. I had wished some of this would have been included in the packet so we could have seen a little more of what it was like. On what we saw, parts of the parcels were missing, like the part that came down to 53, where they had that controversial entrance the last time. Then there were large areas of land that were left unlabeled. Like, now they say they're green, they want them to be green space, but it wasn't labeled anything that I could tell. So to me, it almost seems like a bait and switch. Let's get the zoning approved, then anyone can develop it, including the first applicant. It's too high density, and I just think it needs to be disproved. Since you guys denied it in April 2019, most of the applications presented to you have been rubber stamped for the approval by the developers, regardless of the impact on the county citizens. I also submitted some comments from my mother. We were trying to do it online, and Harmony has those.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Anyone else speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, at this time, we'll close it to the board for discussion.
Chairman, if I may, I'll read this statement from Ms. Martin's mother.
Yes, ma'am.
So that that's for the record. Ms. Martin brought this to me earlier. This is from Christine Pratt, 586 Bright's Way. Since I have been looking for the form to use for comments on the Dawson Village application at the planning and zoning meeting and was going to email you directly, but now I see there was only a window of half an hour when you posted a link to the form to use on Facebook, which by the time I found it, it didn't work anyway. So I'm sending my comments with my daughter. I'm opposed to the rezoning to mixed-use village because we have not even begun to feel the impact of the rezonings from last year. And here we are trying to add more high-density living to Dawson County. It seems like speculative zoning to me, as I mentioned in the initial letter submitted with the zoning application. They have been undeveloped for many years, so let's just change it. The homes proposed do not seem to match the current residential in the area. Most of the lots are 1 acre or larger. The traffic resulting from this development has not been studied yet, and the study from the first time this came before you was done in December, one of the slowest months in this area. I'm also concerned about the county's lack of emergency services and the strain that the project would put on them. What if simultaneously these new construction sites and a current county residents call for emergency services? Who gets the aid first? People who are likely just to come here to work, or the county residents who pay the county taxes for the services? The need has only been increasing at a rate we cannot keep up with, potentially along with my property taxes. And that was signed Christine Pratt.
Thank you, Ms. G. This time we'll close the board for discussion. Gentlemen? Mr. Jameson, if you would, currently we're zoned, this piece of property is currently zoned RA, RPC, CHB, CPCD, and COI. As it is currently at this moment, how many residences could be developed on this 500 acres?
That is an excellent question, and one that I do not have the answer right in front of me, but there are allowed uses for residences, obviously, in RPC, RA, CHB, COI, and CPCD. So every one of the current zonings allow for residences to be built on them. I don't have an exact number for you.
Can you ballpark it for me?
Well, originally, it was the Catholic College property.
Right.
So, I
And the
mean,
RPC portion,
it's 1 per acre.
okay, the CPCD portion?
Allows for up to 100 units of residential use currently. When it was zoned before, when it was zoned, it was 6 units per acre,
Okay.
blanketed.
And that was on how many acres? Do you recall?
I do not have that in front of me now.
From reading the staff's recommendations and such, I can clearly understand how would be nice to clean it up from RA, RPC, CHB, CPCD, and COI to one thing. That's very evident and very clear. But I was just curious about the impact for the amount of residences that are allowed currently versus what we would be approving if we were to approve. So thank you. Any discussion?
I have a question for Jameson. What, future land use on this is residential planned community, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And that allows 1 per acre?
Yes, sir.
So you're looking at, what, 500 lots roughly? And with that, okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I was looking at, Harmon, can you go back a couple slides? I think it was back to the map that we looked at for a long time there. That one. It says that there's 653 total single-family units, and on the analysis here, it says 941. Which one?
That includes the multifamily. Is that right?
It's got 288 on the analysis for the multifamily, out below the 941. So that's what I was just kind of curious about.
You are correct. The analysis from the planning staff report was from what was presented in the application.
So it's actually been reduced since then, according to this plan, is that?
If
you would, please come back up, clarify.
So just to clarify, the number, the single-family lots is a 600 and something, and then the 288. So the total density is 1.8 on the property, is the total density.
So the 941 was single family plus the multifamily.
Yes, I don't remember, yeah, I don't.
That's, I mean, I think that's the,
If
if
there
you do
was
the
some
math.
write-up, that would definitely be incorrect. And y'all were talking about the, if I, am I allowed to say
Yes,
anything
yes.
else? On the light industrial, just as a suggestion, because there's gonna be, on the next 60 days, there's gonna, a lot of discussions on the light industrial, and so much hinges on that. We just were talking about, it might be best to defer until we can get more of a concrete answers for you guys. Just because there's a lot of movement right now with this. So I just wanted to let y'all know that.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I do think this is a vast improvement from what we saw, spring of last year. I don't think anybody could deny that. And most of it, I looked at the zoning. I was curious how much of this was in the RA zoning, what's currently RA, and I estimated about 60 lots of this would be in what's currently RA. The rest of it's in the other zonings, classifications.
Any other discussion?
I think for me, it's gonna have to be more defined with a light industrial as far as the, stages of when that's gonna be developed. I'd like to see some stipulations about it being developed concurrent with maybe the multifamily, to help offset that, cause I know, the Development Authority and the Chamber are looking for places for light industrial. And if they had some, from what I've been told, if they had pad-ready lots, now they could sell them, but there's just not anything in the county. And I do believe that's something that will help diversify our tax base if we can get more of the low-impact, light industrial type businesses here.
Certainly will help offset the tax digest
Yeah.
if we had more light industrial. And regardless of which way you vote today or moving forward, if we can hold our commercial component and hold development to the commercial component, anytime they're requesting it, historically with our CPCD especially, would like to see some build out and some timetables set where they just can't come in multifamily and just walk away.
Right.
Because there's too much money to be made from multifamily with very little expense, and
And
it's obvious.
Yeah, we've seen that several times
Yes.
just on this
Yes.
board. Where developments have come in 15 years ago and then they're wanting to cut the commercial component out to sell the land and redo it as residential, and that's what I don't wanna see happen here.
And being that we just got this development of regional impact, I mean, I haven't had a chance to go through it. It was in the packet tonight, but I guess it just came in today. I think we ought to look at maybe tabling this.
Okay, do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
Can we get Mr. Wood back up? So did you say 60 days is what you were looking at in
For sure,
terms of?
not 30, because with all the studies we gotta do, and there's a lot of conversations right now about the sewer coming, all this would unlock, solve the sewer issues that are happening. The project has a lot happening with the Development Authority and the sewer issues, so it would at least 60 days.
So
not
you'd be
30.
fine for tabling it to the October?
meeting?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. That's what, honestly, that's what when we thought we were coming, last week, we were like, oh, we didn't realize that we weren't already tabled.
Gotcha. Okay. Motion to table into the October meeting of the Planning Commission.
Motion on the floor, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second to table this decision until October, when we can have more information in front of us. At October, this will be heard, if that's your desire. Moving to second, all in favor? Motion is carried. The decision on this particular rezone will come up in our October meeting, 6 PM, same location.
What was the result of that? I didn't see it on the screen.
5-0.
5-0.
It is unanimous. Motion is carried. Updates by planning and development.
We have none at this time.
With that, we're item K, which is adjournment. At this time, you are adjourned.